decide that way?
It was late, but the door was open and Max stayed on the racetrack.
No investigation necessary, say the stewards. Derek Warwick, former Grand Prix racer Gary Connolly, very experienced steward Felix Holter completing that particular trio. They've got bags of experience in the steward's room and they've decided no investigation necessary. Well, it's like Brazil. Turn 4, there was no investigation necessary that day either.
That's the card they played, and so we're back as we were then, 1.4 seconds behind Max Verstappen. Red Bull, I think, will be on the blower to race control to question that one, but that's with all of the information they've got available to them, what they see, the different camera angles, there we go.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
So I've just seen it again. Max is ahead at the apex.
Jonathan
is on the track.
Jonathan, he's forced him out there. That's why we asked him to give back
Lewis
all
has
of the
left
advantage.
the track, and you told him to give back all the advantage.
All the advantage was already given back prior to the first lap ending.
I'm not sure we agree, but understood.
No problems.
So in the eyes of the stewards then, Lewis Hamilton slowed down enough to give back some of the extra meters that he gained when he went off the track, and that was fair. As race director Michael Massey, that was fair in their opinion. 1.5 seconds now the gap.
Well, I call these things as I see them. It doesn't seem to matter whatever you say. One of the teams is unhappy with you, but I don't see that the gap was the same.
Okay, but let's just get your head down. No investigation on the shortcuts or the advantage that he's gained in terms of gaps, so let's just get on with it, somebody on track.
That is incredible. What are they doing there?
Because they were side by side when the incident happened, and even into the braking zone. So I don't think the gap was ever given back, but that's what the stewards have decided. They're the referees, and I think that's wise advice there to young Max Verstappen in terms of, but don't get angry, get even, get on, just focus on the race ahead now.
Well, we wondered, didn't we, was it going to be turn 1 where Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton potentially came together? We lasted 6 corners until they came together. Our first controversial moment of this race, and possibly not the last either, as Hamilton takes to the runoff area, stays ahead of Verstappen. The stewards say no investigation, no penalty to be applied. Now we can get back on with the racing.
Yeah, critically the stewards feel that because Max slid sideways, he pushed Lewis out of play, but look at that, the Red Bull of Verstappen barely moved initially, did it? It bogged down on him, and there is then Perez taking 3rd place as Lando Norris goes wide, comes back in, doesn't gain any advantage, and you can see Bottas falling behind the Ferrari as well.
Got squeezed a bit, didn't he?
Really, really low revs there for Lewis in the Mercedes, and just took off 1/10 of a second better on the reaction time, just about finds enough grip, and look at that lovely space in front of him. So yeah, I'm going to call it the same way. I think Max has got in there, he's got into the apex, he stayed within the white lines of the racetrack, and look at the gap Lewis has pulled out front there. So I'll stand by that, but that's not what the stewards think.
This is the view from Lewis Hamilton's cockpit as he sees Max Verstappen coming at him at a rate of knots. But it is very much like Brazil. There was no penalty given in Brazil for that turn 4 incident. Max Verstappen lunged late on that day, and the stewards on that day decided that it was a fair move. What they decided here, and once again, it was a fair move from Verstappen. Hamilton gave enough time back, so it was honours even at the end of the skirmish.
But the door was open and he drove through it, and he stayed on the racetrack. It wasn't, he was leery in Saudi Arabia last weekend, when he arrived sideways and out of control, and Lewis made an attempt, and that's why Max had to give the place back. And Lewis came back on the track within the corner and made a reasonable effort, having been pushed out of the way, to get on the track.
Ted Kravitz, very good evening to you.
Hello, Crofty. I didn't think it was going to get this controversial this early. Hello, Martin. Hello, everyone. I didn't know, but looking down from where I am in the pit lane across to the Red Bull pit wall, Christian Horner might as well have steam coming out of his ears. I understand he's been on the radio speaking directly to the race director, Michael Massey, to put his point of view. Maybe we'll hear from him in a second of what he had to say, but this is a result of Brazil, with the FIA not clamping down on these things. When you start to leave interpretation into it rather than a hard and fast rule, you get situations, confusing situations that would have been clear-cut in the past. decisions.
On board with Charles Leclerc, is currently running 6th, but while we watch from the cockpit of the Ferrari, let's head down to the Red Bull pit wall. Christian Horner is with us. Christian, please, your reaction to the no action by the stewards.
We're a little bit shocked at that because apparently Lewis gave his advantage back, which we failed to see yet. So, yeah, as you can imagine, we're not best pleased.
Is this what goes around comes around, Christian, with turn 4 Brazil and into some first corners in early races?
No, it's a total lack of consistency. So, yeah, we're disappointed with it, but focus on the race now, and yeah, we've got to do it the hard way.
Christian, there will be a lot of people watching Formula One for the first time ever, and when they're presented with a no action for one incident, no action for another, they'll find it hard to believe that's a total lack of consistency.
Well, you know, the race director made it very clear before the race that you had to stay within the white lines. Max did that. You know, Lewis gained an advantage by going off track. He didn't concede it. He didn't give anything back, so that was our position. But anyway, we're focused on the race, and still a long way to go.
Christian, thanks ever so much for joining us. We appreciate your instant reaction there. That's while we were talking to Christian, we saw Sebastian Vettel, Lance Stroll having a race all by themselves. 14th for Vettel, 15th for Stroll.
Go ahead.
Michael, we still don't understand it. There was a hard, aggressive pass by Max, but Max stayed fully on the track and he was ahead at the apex. He did everything right, he stayed on the track. And at that some point, the second car has to back out.
Jonathan, the stewards have reviewed it and determined that all of the lasting advantage was gained, and that Max forced that position there. They have reviewed it, but are not investigating it.
Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton now 2 seconds out in front from Verstappen, Perez, Sainz, Norris, Leclerc, Tsunoda, Bottas, Ocon and Ricciardo. We've got 3 world champions with us on Sky Sports F1 this weekend. Damon Hill, Jenson Button and Nico Rosberg. Nico, what's the champions' view?
Oh my goodness, so difficult. I think it's okay what they've done. Max was a little bit too lungy and too aggressive, forcing Lewis out too strongly, even though he had the right to the corner there because he was massively ahead, you know, but still. And then I would also say, though, that Lewis didn't give back everything that he gained. So there's like, well, it's tough, but I think it's okay like this.
Yeah, I tend to agree with what Nico said. I think when you look at it back, you know, you have to say that Lewis had to basically move out of the way because otherwise he's going to collide with Max, who made a very uncompromising, very late lunge, which left no room for Lewis to make any accommodation. He had to leave the track. But I have to say, I am surprised they didn't say give the place back because, you know.
Yeah, totally. I actually agree with you, David. It was a very late lunge, but it was always going to happen. Lewis knew he was coming, and he pushed Lewis off the track, I guess, but he stayed on the track. And I'm struggling to understand the regulations right now because obviously in Brazil there was no penalty, but they both drove off the circuit, whereas Max stayed on the track this time.
Gentlemen, thanks ever so much. I think Jos Verstappen's also struggling to come to terms with this. He just walked out the back of the Red Bull garage as Hamilton continues then on lap 8 in the lead of this race. We've had a big controversial moment and we'll be talking about this, I'm sure, for a long time to come.
Yeah, let's park that for now. What's interesting here is Lewis Hamilton actually has a little bit more pace as well, despite Verstappen being on the softer tyre. We thought they might be a little bit faster for half a dozen, 10 laps or so. But at the moment, that doesn't seem to be the case, unless Max is just trying to eke them out, because Sergio Perez is hanging on to them as well. 5 seconds covers the top 3, and now the strategists for both teams will be thinking long and hard, and it's about 23 seconds to make a pit stop. But right now, anybody who stopped, for example, that put them down in 11th place, so they've got to get a lot further into this race yet before they can think about pitting.
Well, this is Verstappen's double problem here, is that if he is having to pit earlier than Hamilton because his tyres won't go as long into the race, he's going to put himself into traffic if he pits in the next 4 or 5 laps. They don't want to be doing that because it'll hold up his pace.
Rear starting to struggle a little bit.
That's not what they want to hear on the pit wall at Red Bull. Rear's starting to struggle, so he'll lose grip. Coming out of those slower corners might lessen his pace down the straights as well.
Yeah, in other words, the surface is overheating, goes a bit like a jelly, and you start to slide around, you turn in, the back end comes round on you a bit, you touch the throttle, you can't quite get full traction until a good way out of the corner until the downforce builds up. But they have no option but to stick with it for now. They've got to clear the pack before they can consider a pit stop. Now, otherwise they'd just be in so much traffic, but they're lapping around 1.5 seconds a lap faster than the tail end of the top 10, and that's the window they'll be looking for. 23, 24 seconds to get Verstappen in and try and come up with a new solution.
Yeah, the gap that is appearing that I'm sure they'd like to fit into is just behind Sergio Perez and just in front of Carlos Sainz, who's become something of the head of a train of cars. These are the rear tyres for Max Verstappen. Pirelli say they've got a performance life of about 15 laps from the start of this race on heavy fuel and full tanks of fuel. I've seen angrier looking tyres, but I've seen shinier looking tyres too.
Yeah, it's the surface temperature, isn't it? So, you know, we have to accept Max made that small error in qualifying. He made a big error last weekend and cost him that pole there. But it was such a crazy race at Saudi Arabia, but I'm not sure in the end it made any difference who was on pole at the first of the 3 starts. But, and that's what's forced him into putting these tyres on and put the Red Bull on the back foot. Now, they've got Perez there. It's like a game of chess, isn't it? They've got Perez there who could come into play and affect when Mercedes can pit Hamilton. But of course, if Hamilton comes out with fresher tyres, Perez will be a fairly easy target.
Assuming you can get them warmed up straight away, but what is clear, there is the length of that back straight, which is well over 1 kilometre long, in between Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz, 2nd and 4th in this race. Running behind Sainz is former McLaren teammate Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc running in 6th at the moment, Yuki Tsunoda having a decent race running in 7th, Valtteri Bottas, and not for the first time this season struggling to get past the AlphaTauri of Yuki Tsunoda, who's been rather held up back there. The wind has picked up just a little bit here as well, and a stiff breeze that you can see on the flag from the top of the viewing tower. Esteban Ocon runs in 9th, Daniel Ricciardo 10th, and Hamilton starting to stretch the pace out in front.
And of course there's a World Championship point for anybody who finishes in the top 10 with the fastest lap. That fastest lap won't get much faster yet because they're burning down their 100+ kilos of fuel, have a much lighter car when they put tyres on.
There's the starts for Max Verstappen. 1/10 of a second better reaction time for Lewis Hamilton. There he goes, off into the distance. Was it just the reaction time that cost Verstappen?
Just didn't get away, did it?
This, the moment then, is what they didn't quite touch. Hamilton was trying to turn in, realised that if he turned in even more to the left, contact would be made. Verstappen has stayed within the white line, but...
I'm not changing my mind on that. I'll stick with it. Look. The door's open, he's gone through it, he's kept completely within the white lines, and a car that was side by side with him is heading off down the road.
The trouble is, the rules say it's leaving the track and gaining a lasting advantage is what gets you into trouble with the stewards.
It's a great lap, Lewis, just keep it up, just keep the pressure on.
Hamilton had the advantage because he was out in front. Did he give back all the advantage he gained by going off the track? That's the debate here, and if Red Bull do want to appeal this race and ask for the right for review, that's the sort of information they're going to have to find to force an appeal.
Yeah, I don't think there's any point in even thinking about that, but this pace from Lewis is now a second a lap faster than Verstappen. He's waltzed him off into the distance anyway, such that will be probably irrelevant if it stays like this in terms of what happened on the first lap. And these are tremendously fast laps from Lewis. Look at that, 4.6 seconds. So what that means, Crofty, is that they've got, with that kind of gap, whatever Red Bull do with Verstappen, Mercedes can wait another lap.
Yeah.
Wait another lap. They've got there'll be no undercut by somebody going out on fresher tyres and getting ahead of you, because they'll have enough, slack in the system, enough fat in the system, if you like. If he can get himself towards 10 seconds ahead, they can then just casually react to whatever Red Bull do.
The orange in the grandstand is quite silent at the moment. The Red Bull garage looking a little bit despondent.
Red tyres are really struggling.
And Verstappen having to work very hard indeed to try and keep pace with Lewis Hamilton. Scores a level going into this race. As it stands at the moment, Lewis Hamilton would be an 8th world champion in Formula 1, an 8-time world champion. Verstappen's bid for a first world title crown is being thwarted, but there is a long, long way to go. We're only just starting lap 13. long way to go under the lights here in Abu Dhabi tonight, as Verstappen makes his way around turn 1.
Well, we thought these would go probably 20 laps, didn't we, before they were crying too much. They've obviously done 3 in qualifying anyway. So sort of 15, 16 laps before I'm surprised that Max is struggling so much, so quickly with them. And, well, what a pain it's proven to be for them, having to give away. That is so frustrating for Red Bull. They didn't even need to be doing that lap that he was on when he locked the front left tyre into turn 1.
Yep, it's forced a change in strategy and it forced them onto the back foot a little bit. Ted, down to you.
Max Verstappen not the only one who's struggling with his soft tyres. Lando Norris has been on the radio saying, they're okay, they're all right, but he's struggling to keep pace with Carlos Sainz ahead of him, now dropped to 3 seconds behind the Ferrari of Sainz as Lando. Fernando Alonso's been on the radio saying that something feels wrong with the front of his tyres. He's on front of his car, he's on the hard tyres. Maybe they're not up to temperature, but we'll have to follow that one, see what's going on with Fernando. He's P11 at the moment.
And I wonder if George Russell's struggling too, down in 18th at the moment.
And then we keep losing gears. This might continue to happen.
And that's not what you want to hear when you're trying to keep the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc at bay as they make a move into the pit lane. Down at Red Bull, is Max Verstappen coming in? Yes, he is. Lap 14 of 58, and Max Verstappen about to make what should be his one and only pit stop of this race. The hard tyre goes on, and he'll come out, hopefully, for Red Bull, if they've got their strategy right, ahead of Carlos Sainz. Perez slips through into second place for the Ferrari, making its way down into turn 1. He's not going to come out ahead of Carlos Sainz. Where is Max Verstappen going to come out onto this track? He goes underneath it now. He's trying to put the power on, and onto the track he goes now. He is ahead of one Ferrari, but only just as Charles Leclerc goes off. And maybe a bit distracted by Verstappen coming onto the track. Leclerc going very, very wide, losing a place to Tsunoda, locking up going into turn 5. He didn't get past the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, did Max Verstappen,